Well, we continue to be in for a treat in this plenary session. I would like to introduce our final keynote presidential guest lecturer, the CEO of the Cerebral Palsy International Research Foundation. And he is a gentleman who thinks outside the box. So he is the chair of the foundation, and prior to that, he was the founder and CEO of Panther Technology and Blink Twice. He is the father of a 16-year-old son, Thomas, who has cerebral palsy, and has worked tirelessly to create awareness about people with disabilities and to share stories about their vibrant lives. He and Thomas have been featured on many networks, including ABC World News and People of the Year. He lives in New York City with his wife, Laura, and his two very special children, Thomas and Tate. Welcome to the stage, Richard.
Good morning. So 5 days ago, something I've heard about was in the paper, officially. GM to offer connected car, automated driving technology in 2016. GM will introduce in 2 years its first car that can communicate with other vehicles to help avoid accidents and ease traffic congestion. In the same time, GM also will introduce more advanced technology allowing hands-free driving in some cases. However, GM CEO Mary Barra said that commercializing a fully automated vehicle may take until the next decade. Or, sorry, but we won't be living like the Jetsons for 6 more years. The future isn't coming, it's here. It got here yesterday. It is growing exponentially, and it's thinking faster than we are, individually and collectively. How do we tap into that? How do we make that speed work for us, who focus on the world of CP and disabilities, rather than just dizzying us with too many options, too much information, and too little access? No one can process it anymore. It's something we read accurate. Is it from yesterday? Is it from 10 years ago? Is a person who wrote it brilliant, or is a person who wrote it just kidding? Does it lead to breakthrough, or does it lead to dead ends? Today, we are in a constant state of seeking, and yet we often have amazing answers right in front of us, ones that are already beyond our wildest dreams. The future arrived yesterday. Here's how we can capture it: smartly, efficiently, and economically, and in a way that puts our needs as a community of people focused on CP front and center, in a way that builds on all the things the typical world is giving us. Today, I'm going to talk about a few advances that are already here and how we can take better advantage of them. Rather than looking for what's next, let's look at what's around us and what we can do with it, because we are already living amidst our future. In fact, most of the brilliant ideas today are simply bringing together new things that are already out there. Before you start drawing a line, look at the dots that are out there and start connecting them. We just talked about a car that drives itself. We all know about Google Maps. It not only gives you directions, it tells you how to get there. We take that for granted. How odd is it that we get into a car and take it for granted that someone will tell us exactly when to turn, how to go places? Now let's take the iPad. It can be used for anything. Let's turn the iPad into something which is a speech device. And at my house, we have Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and 3G, all of which control doors and turn lights on. Let's put that all in a blender. Let's shake it up. Let's see what comes out. Look, it's someone in a motorized wheelchair. He's going up to a van. He's hitting a press of a button, and the back door is opening, and a ramp is coming out. Goes in, hits another button, says, "Take me to TGI Fridays." The car sees the key that's in the pouch on the side of his wheelchair. The car gets going on itself. All this person needs to do is text now and figure out who he's going to ask to come on the date. You don't need to do anything. The car hears you, Google finds it, and you're off. That car is around the corner. It's coming at you. All that it needs is someone who cares enough to make sure available technology is built into it. We need to focus on that now, or a few years from now, we'll be sitting around with inferior technology, wondering why we have to retrofit this and why they didn't do it already. Same thing with the Kinect, perhaps the single greatest access tool that has ever been invented. What if we had been successful in getting Microsoft to listen at the beginning? What if we said to them, make sure that you can not only play tennis like this, you can play it by moving your hand. You can play tennis by wiggling your finger. You could play tennis by going like this. What if that had happened earlier? What if we were using what we are really good at, therapies and insights about the body, instead of having teams all around the country constantly having to recreate the code that Microsoft could have already baked into their software? What if we kept asking in a cohesive way, the future is out there, the future is with us, give it to us now. 3D printers. MakerBot is only 5 years old. We all heard about boxes and we all heard about cups. But now what are they printing? They're printing a gun that works. They're starting to do 3D printing of skin. What about little customizable grips? What about covers? What about the things that can help our community move forward? The future is here. I imagine some of you know that TVs turn off when you're outside of the room. What if when you go into a room, the TV turns itself on? What if your wheelchair knows where you are in the house, and every time you go past a light, it instantly turns on? What if motion detectors worked? Also, as we ride the waves of digital distribution, we see what is perhaps the single biggest change in our world. We shop on Amazon. We download entertainment in seconds. The cloud is everywhere. You can download a book. You can read it on your iPad as you're having breakfast. You can listen to it as you're driving into work. You can then pretend you're on the phone and be reading it there at your desk later in the day. Same thing for our information, for our regimens, for our therapies, and our protocols. And the implications of this are amazing. It means that the experts in our field can have greater reach and influence than we have ever had before. It means that smart protocols can be delivered to clinics everywhere, which may eventually mean the franchising of services. And that is odd, but that is efficient. It means that exercises and routines that are done in clinics can also be accessed at the home. And not surprisingly, there are more than a few talks here that are talking about that. And of course, the most important change, social media. But before I talk about this, let me start with a story and share a video. I was in the elevator of my apartment in New York City in 1999. I was holding my Motorola StarTAC phone, I was holding my Palm Pilot, and I was holding my Discman. There it is. And I was holding this big, bulky wad of tech, and I thought, I am holding a big, bulky wad of tech. Why is this happening? And then I realized, if a New York guy is thinking this, they're thinking about that in Silicon Valley too. The reason why it wasn't happening is because it was hard. In fact, it took 7 years from then until the iPhone, which bundled that all together, June 2007. What happened in the next 7 years? Even more amazing. 3 years later, the iPad came out, a thing that didn't exist about 4 years ago. The time it takes for a kid to be born and go to preschool is now the thing that the kid is using to get through preschool. It's the thing his teen siblings are using to watch movies and listen to their music and communicate with their friends in a message that disappears in 10 seconds and in a video that will be seen in China and all over the world over and over and that they can't get rid of even if they wanted to. It's being used by clinicians to see x-rays, to deliver protocols, to share information, and there are so many language literacy and motor skill exercises that you couldn't even count them if you wanted to. And finally, this is maybe even more amazing. The Walkman, the Discman, the StarTAC, the Palm Pilot, poof, like a typewriter, like a fountain pen, in a matter of years. That's how fast the future is moving. So fast that you cannot anticipate it in any way but to stay fluid and to stay on point. We need to have the discipline both to find out what is valuable around us and also to say no to what is not. Look at what can happen, as we saw yesterday, when the promise of early stem cell work meets the propaganda that so easily can come to the web. We need to learn to evolve with changes in technology and to surf the change around us, or our dreams will not be there, particularly in the face of a government where funding and supports and dollars are drying up and being cut left and right. I just want to show a video for 3 minutes. It'll tell a story better than I can.
Finally tonight, our person of the week. There probably isn't a parent out there who hasn't had trouble communicating with their child at some point. But imagine if it were a daily challenge, even an impossibility. Then you can begin to appreciate the challenge that faced one father and how extraordinary was his solution.
There's so much going on in his head. Thomas sees everything, he observes everything, he's aware of everything.
Thomas Ellenson has cerebral palsy. This 8-year-old is right on course academically with his fellow about-to-be third graders, but he's verbally limited. Thomas can say yes and no, but not much more, which doesn't mean there's nothing going on in his head or in his heart.
You are living the same life that everybody else is. You're just maybe not commenting as much, you're not expressing as much, and people should never mistake that for not understanding as much.
Thomas was trained to use a traditional speaking device, but it was tedious to express thoughts one word at a time, and he gave it up. His dad, a successful advertising man, thought he had a better idea.
What became important to me was to try to come up with ways for kids to communicate quickly, to quickly tell you what they're interested in, to quickly tell you they're happy, they're unhappy.
Richard devoted his energies to creating a kid-friendly form of speech technology he named Tango. The gadget pre-records a wide variety of colorful pictures and symbols depicting commonly used actions, questions, and emotions.
You cheated. I cheated? How?
So Thomas can quickly select a thought, and the little computer will speak it for him, in a voice much like his own.
Let me do it.
When you listen to a robotic voice, it is harder to remember what I am saying to you right now because there is no beat, there is no cadence. If I'm talking to you like this again, you're inside my emotions, you're following me.
It's a handy way for an 8-year-old to express unwieldy emotions as well.
It's embarrassing.
It's embarrassing to dance?
The Ellensons made sure that Thomas has a full range of expression at his fingertips.
He can go into a mode with one push of a button and change that from a regular voice to a whine or a shout or a whisper.
Please get that for me.
There will be a lot of things on voice output devices that you'll want to delete because later we have to add, I hate you, Mom. We've already added Dad, you're bugging me, which is one that he loves to hit. You would love to delete all those, but you would love to delete them on your typical kids too, and you don't have that choice.
Here's how the Ellensons get ready for a baseball game, recording customized cheers in a human voice.
Let's go Cyclones!
At the stadium, no one sees a kid stuck in a wheelchair. He's just one of the guys hollering for his team his way.
If there's one thing I want to change in the world, it's to assume that someone in a wheelchair has a headline over their head which does not say my life is difficult, but which says my life is interesting, my life is fun, and in some cases my life is triumphant.
And so we choose Richard Ellenson and his son Thomas. Richard says he hopes his invention, Tango, will soon give the hundreds of thousands of Americans who need help speaking new voices of their own. And that is World News for this Friday. I'm Charles Gibson. For all of us at ABC News, good night.
Thanks. That's one of the fun videos, but it tells the story really well. I was watching it and I was seeing how Laura said, says, Dad, you're bugging me. I'm also very big on non-technical, technological communication. And Tom has a lot of spastic movement and stuff, and I've taught him to do this, which if you turn my hand over and move the finger, you'll know what that means also. So he's one of the few kids who can actually tell his dad and flip the bird in a room full of people, and no one will actually know what's happening but me. So there are some advantages to all of this stuff. But if we just take it out of the human context a moment, and let's look at the Tango and what it was and what happened. Augmentative communication, of course, has so much to it. You can speak, you can communicate, people could see it's in there. But for me, an advertising guy, you only never get a second chance to make a first impression, things like that. There are so many problems with it. It was tedious to express words one at a time. You go up to someone, by the time you get your second word out, all they're thinking is, I want to leave. There was this lack of prosody, which created huge emotional distance between a speaker and a listener. And actually, I believe that the lack of prosody makes it harder to learn language, because the way we talk is not the way a speech device outputs things, so you don't actually hear the same thing. It was an incredibly hard thing to program, and the size and design were not kid-friendly or adult-friendly, frankly. Your first impression was never a good one, and that meant lack of inclusion. The Tango came into being because we were able to take the technology that was already out there and put it together. You had digital and synthesized speech. Why not say, hi, nice to meet you, and then you turn from there into the harder language. It had a camera, but instead of just using it to take pictures, we used it to create content, to create motions and movement. We had voice morphing, where you could take an adult voice, you speak, and turn it into a kid's voice. And finally, great industrial design, which is one of the most important things that most people don't think about and most people don't have the money to do. But good industrial design changes everything. Again, Apple, the heart of Apple is not technology. The heart of Apple is design and humanity. Look what that does. The Tango came into being because of the available technology, and because it wasn't about what people were saying, it was about what people were hearing. It was about building relationships. It took two to tango. And then, just as the company was getting ready to take off, something I mentioned happened. This. And something else happened. This. And all of a sudden, an $8,000 device made no sense anymore. You could buy an iPad for $500. You could buy technology for $200. And you would have something that was more beautiful, lighter, easier to use, and that had something incredible: social capital. All of a sudden, our kids were talking with the technology that the other kids wished they had. Luckily, I saw that before Dynavox did. I saw that this wasn't that much different than this. The future arrived. When Dynavox bought my company, because I sold to them, that company was worth $400 million. The stock was at $20. A year later, it was at $7. A year later, it was at $1. And when they sold to my Toby last year, their stock was at 5 cents, 1/4 of 1% of what they were worth, because the future arrived and they didn't say hello. But this is not about being decimated by technology. This is about being buoyed up by it. Is that the way you say it? Buoyed up? Buoyed up? Canada, America, I'm not sure. I didn't sell the company because I saw the problems. I sold it because I saw the future right around me. It included amazing technological promise. And that transition has just begun. Look at what we can do today. Speech apps are really just inexpensive versions of the Dynavox, but here's what we can do. iPads know when you move it. What if the moment your wheelchair started moving, new language popped up so you could say hi to people on the fly? There's location-based languages. We can use Wi-Fi. We can use sensors in rooms. What if every time you go into a room, it's pulling up language for you and helping you do that? You can integrate texting and phoning with your iPad now and do that all together. And you can build in training modules. So just like Xbox and Kinect, when you start using it, it teaches you how to use it. Technology today should inform you while you inform it. My story wasn't about getting out. It was about getting in. Going from this, a piece of technology, to this, which is a piece of this room. Which takes me back to social media. Because the reality of technology today is that it is creating a complete shift in how we see ourselves. We feel incredibly empowered, and yet our world and our influence are becoming oddly smaller. Think of how media works versus the way the world works. In this room, all of us care about cerebral palsy, and people with cerebral palsy, and the work surrounding cerebral palsy. But we are 1,000 people. Next week, there'll be 1,000 people in the same room who care about something else. Next week, if we went across the street, you'd have 50,000 people who cared about the San Diego Padres and who have no idea what's going on in this room or next door at a conference where there are even more people. We live in a world where media and information are coming to us more specifically than ever. The messages we get on our computers are literally targeted to us by the nanosecond. Every click on your computer informs a digital ecosystem, how to communicate with you, and different companies are digitally trading that information to make you think they care in nanoseconds. Imagine that each of us lives in a geodesic sphere with mirrors on the inside. That sphere is getting smaller and smaller because the media is speaking to you specifically. But because the sphere is coated on the inside with mirrors, you keep looking larger and larger to yourself. You see yourself reflected all around you, and we think that is our world. But that's only our world. It's not the full world. The ultimate goal is for anyone who wants to succeed to find ways to expand that sphere, to find the ways to use technology to make what is important to us important to more people, not only young investigators, but the entire world. To find the fact that a child needs a speech device and to turn it into the story of endless spirit and triumph and make it resonate with everybody. It is a story that made Charles Gibson turn to the producer at the end of the show and say, "We need more stories like that." And in this room, we have those stories. We need to use our technology to build our stories, to build potential, and to share those stories and tell those stories the way you did so wonderfully. We in this room live at the center of a world of incredible difficulty and incredible triumph. But you know what? That's why people go to the movies, to see those exact same stories, to know what it would feel like to be a hero. People with CP live those lives. It's just that most people don't get to see it. They only see the outside. But in this room, we see the inside, that amazing inner life. We know what's really going on. We need to share these stories. We need to use our technology to make what's in our community better and more visible and more understandable. I want to end by thanking the group for having me here, obviously a privilege. And I want to end with a quote from Jefferson Mays, who is the star of A Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder, which won the Tony for Best Musical this year. Jefferson wrote a recommendation for my son's application to school. "I think Tom is capable of achieving great things. His passion for performance, his positive approach to all things, the extraordinary way he lives his life, his wheelchair never confining him, but rather acting as a foundation for his strength and his bold flights of imagination. It affects everyone with whom he comes into contact. His wheelchair never confining him, but rather acting as a foundation for his strength and his bold flights of imagination." If we could all always share those perceptions, if we could let others see what we can see, the technology we can access today can create new solutions that allow more of that to happen, that allow people to get closer to reaching their potential, and then allows us to share those stories more effectively. Oh my God, the future got here yesterday. But if we do the things well that we do well, that future is going to be even better tomorrow. Thanks very much.